Plate number 5. Herbert, would you like to just carry on?
Well, when we arrived in Preston, I was a little bit younger than Freddie, and I had experience in Latin. So they said, well, you can go to the Preston Grammar School with Freddie. He may have to go to the technical college. And they decided I would go just to get acquainted with what goes on in English schools, go for 6 weeks to a council school. So I went to Frenchwood Council Schools, and I enjoyed it very much. They were playing football at the time, and I was pretty good at it, and they immediately put me into the school team, and everybody was told not ask too many personal questions. They were all over me, but not one of them invited me to their house. Not one of them invited me to their house, but they were all the time friendly with me. You know, I could have gone with them to the pictures and gone every night out with them playing, but not one invited me to their house, and they didn't come to me. But the Jewish community, every Sunday we had to go to synagogue. It was a must that we make up the minyan there. So we went on a Saturday to the synagogue, and then the Jewish people in the community apportioned who should take us out on the Sunday afternoon. They were fighting to take us out, almost like people in a fishbowl. They were all, whenever we went to their houses, they invited all their neighbours and everybody, and these are the 2 refugees. And they always said, we'll take you to Blackpool. So that means for the next 6 Sundays, we always went to Blackpool. In the end, one Sunday, well, if you've been to Blackpool, shall we take you to Southport? You know, Blackpool is only 70 miles away. But one particular thing happened which is illuminating. I was invited to a house by Dr. Myers, and he obviously had connection with the police. He might have been the police doctor. When I got there, he had a maid, and he had 2 daughters, and he had a nanny, and there were about 6 non-Jewish couples there, all English. And one woman very nicely said to me, tell me, how do you go on communicating? You know, you go to school and all this. I said, well, they've given us English, German dictionaries, and if we want to say something in English and I don't know what it is, I check it up. And if you want to do it the other way, it's the other way around. And he said, does it work? It does. He says, but there's always one sentence and one word I can't find out what it is, and nobody wants to tell me. What is it? He says, what is it? He says, well, when I play football, I hear the lads say, pass the fucking ball, you know, and I don't know what it means. And there's a quiet. Remember, this is before the war. If you would have said bloody before the war in front of a teacher, you would have been expelled. Quietness. I looked at him and I looked at me and I said, what did I say? There's nothing. What could have said? There's no sort of translation as far as I was concerned in German. And after crying, maybe about quarter of an hour afterwards, a tall fella, English fella, took me out to one side and he says, look, it's a bad word. Don't use it, but whatever you do, don't use it in mixed company. I don't, fair enough. The war broke out and we had to report to the police, and we had to get permission to go more than 5 miles all around. And I then became quite good at football, and I played for Preston North End junior team, and they wanted to play all over, and I had a bicycle. Nobody was allowed to have a bicycle if you weren't any alien. And the fellow from Preston North End says, go and see the police. Mention my name. I walk in and I says, can I see somebody? And the fellow comes out, and he's the chief of police who actually told me, don't use that word. He met me quite a few times. This was some time afterwards. He knew me by then. And he said, I'll get on the phone to the chief of police of Lancashire. I'll give you permission. I got permission to go 20 miles all around Preston. I could go as far as Blackpool with my bicycle, and Blackpool was completely out for all aliens. This boy who I shared the bed with, I had to share a bed with him because I had to sleep. He was still sleeping in the same place with me. It was his bicycle I used. He was a German. He couldn't get permission to ride the bicycle, and I got permission to ride 20 miles around Preston, and to a certain extent only because I used a swear word in front of this chief constable.
The person you shared the bed with, what was his name?
Frederick Seller. He came from a very, very prosperous German family, and he had quite a lot of things sent to him which he only used very sparingly. He wanted to save it for his father, he was lucky. He was sent to Holland, from Holland to England, and somehow or another he got it. And he had Lycras and Pentax, but he kept it in case he needs it for his family. And we had a very similar career. I got him a job similar to mine, and to make a long story short, he suffered from TB, and I lost contact with him in 1945. I thought he died. Nobody knew what happened to him. And I found out he actually went to America, and my wife heard him on British television when he came over giving lectures. He, of course, knew me under the name of Eisenthal. He was trying to get in touch with me. Nobody knew him. And when I got in touch with the BBC, they wouldn't get me in touch direct with him. I had to write to him, and we made contact. By then, he had become a big artist in America, moving with the Ailey Wiesel and the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and he became in the Ivy League in America, a big artist. But unfortunately, he died 2 years ago, cancer of the chest.
Were you able to keep in touch before and after the beginning of the war with your father and sister?
Well, my sister, yes, she was in Palestine. It was difficult. My father, I had one communication via the Red Cross in 1941. He sent me one letter, but the war had already broken out. He went via the Red Cross to Geneva and back to England. Took a long time. That was the only communication I ever had during the whole of the war.
And what letter? And what did the letter say?
Just to say he's in the Judengasse in Vienna now, and he hopes everything is all right with me. He's okay.
And your sister?
My sister was in Palestine, and it was very, 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 very naughty there, because the communications I got from her were so mad that I couldn't understand what she was often writing about. I realized she suffered from schizophrenia. As soon as she went to Israel, off the boat, she went straight into a sanatorium, and she was on and off. Whenever she was okay, she was fantastic. People used her as guides. And when she had the depression, all she wanted to do was sit in a dark corner as far away from everybody.
How did she get to Palestine? Do you know?
She went on a legal transfer. My father organised for her ultimately to get one of the very few legal documents to go to Palestine legitimately.
And do you know when she went?
Yes, she went very late in July 1939.
You're at Frenchwood School in Preston. Can you just bring us forward
Well,
now?
I was 6 weeks there. I couldn't speak much English. The children were told, because it was in a typical working class area, where the headmaster was exceptionally good, who said, don't ask him about any of his experiences. And a lot of the people thought I came from Venice, because can you row? And I said, what do you mean rowing? You know, they thought Vienna and Venice was the same. But I was very good. I mixed with them exceptionally well, because I played football for them, and I played in the school team, you know, and I think if I would have been there any longer, I would have been quite happy. But it came to an end in 6 weeks' time. They went off to work, and I went off so cosily back to school holidays and going back to the Preston Grammar School. But it lasted 6 weeks. I was very happy there. As I say, I played with them nearly every night. They asked me out. Every evening we went in the park on the playground, but not one of them invited me to their house, and they never came to my house.
Can we? What happened after that?
Afterwards, the war came. The war came on was it the 3rd or the 4th of September, and everything changed. Mr. Jackson, who was very good, turned around and said, look, everything has changed. We can no longer be responsible for your education. You will have to start work. Right? And what can we do? He said, well, we'll give you, see what you can do. We'll find you a job in my cinema as a projectionist, to become a projectionist. But it hurt my eyes. I went to a doctor. He says, no good for you. It's straining your eyes. In those days, you had art lamps. So it was. So next thing is I became a dispenser in a doctor, Jewish doctor, helping out in the dispensary. And after working there for 6-7 months, I says, what's at the end of me? What will it be when I'm grown up? He said, well, you'll have no training. You're just a dispenser. It's a non-skilled job. You haven't got no education. You've got to be a pharmacist. You've got to go to university. So I looked around and said, what can I do? And they were looking out for engineers. and nobody could find me a job. So I myself knocked on the nearest garage I came to and says, "Can you find me a job?" He says, "Yes, we need apprentices." So I became an apprentice motor electrician. The first one at Loxham's, and which afterwards became amalgamated with Bradshaw's Motor House. Then we became an apprentice electrical motor electrician
Whereabouts?
in Preston, in Bradshaw's. That was in Bradshawgate. That's why they called it Bradshaw's, and that afterwards was used exclusively for the REMIs, AAW, Army Auxiliary Workshop.
Could you just explain what REMI means?
For REMI is Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers.
And
Right.
and what's that a part of?
Well, it's part of the British Army. British Army Royal Electrical Engineers, and probably in the when the war got going, particularly when the Americans came in, the vast majority of the people who worked there were actual soldiers. They were still soldiers who worked there, and I was still one of the very few people who was trained, and I went to night school, and all the other people who worked in the electrical department were completely non-skilled. They had girls working for me who knew nothing, and they came to me, "What do I do?" I said, "I'll put the yellow ones, the yellow wires come off for them," and I knew it by heart. And I literally, although I was only then at the time maybe 17 or 18, was unofficially in charge of the whole electrical department. There was nobody above me in the electrical department. Right?
You were a civilian still?
I was a civilian, and my employer was a fellow called Major Foxcroft. When I said, "I can't manage on the sort of wages I get because I'm completely self-sufficient. Can you do something for me?" I went to see him, and he said, "Well, we'll see what we can do for you. Officially, you're not supposed to get it, but he arranged for an increase in, there was a standard wage you could get." He said, "I'll tell you what I'll do with you. How about delivering lorries to Stafford?" And we were getting good money. I was coming then out with the same money as the grown-ups delivering army lorries to Stafford and back again, which was the army depot. Right, and this is how I augmented my wages, working till whatever it was, 6 o'clock in the Riemann workshop at night time, going out to Stafford and coming back, maybe one lorry bringing back all the people who went out there, and then starting work and coming back to Preston in the early hours and going to work the next day. But then I was earning good money, comparatively good money.
What social life did you have at the time?
It wasn't very good because a lot of my similar age group people were already in the army. Most of my friends who I knew from school, I never went to Manchester, to Preston Grammar School, they were away, and literally I never realised what people missed. I must have missed it because I never had anybody to hug me. I never had anybody sort of give me real advice. Whatever decision I had to make from the age I was 15, I made myself. What job I wanted, what I wanted to eat, what I wanted to dress, what I wanted to buy, I had to do myself since I was 15 years old. Nobody gave me any sort of real advice. The only advice I really got when I asked the question, what will I be when I'm 21 or 22 when I'm a dispenser? So I decided it wasn't for me. So this other boy, Freddie, said, to be an engineer isn't so bad. We can go to technical school. Everybody wants engineers now. We'll do it. And we were well received. The Remus even sent me for part-time schooling, and I got paid for going just to part-time schooling to technical college. And in the end, they sent me for 6 months to the Manchester Technical College, which was part of the university, and I got good money for it, and I took the high national certificate that way.
Did you continue in this employment through the war?
Right through the war, I was still employed by them when the end of the war came.
At the end of the war, were you able to make contact again with your father and sister?
Well, I could not make contact with my father. Funnily, he made contact to me. He wrote to the refugee committee, and they notified me, and he was sent in 1942 to Theresienstadt, and he survived Theresienstadt in bad condition. He had to be sent to a hospital when he came out. He was then sent to the American sector of Germany in a DP camp called Deggendorf. And there was no chance of me getting permission to go over. Funny, you couldn't get permission to go over. And he wanted to come either to England or to Palestine. And by a sheer something, it was easier for him to get permission to go to Palestine than to come to England. So he went to Israel, to Palestine, which is not Israel. He was there in Israel, but he died in 47 due to stomach illnesses that he received because of being without food in the camps.
Did you manage to see your
Never
father?
saw him, but I wrote letters. He wrote me letters.
And your sister?
My sister, he was obviously very, very shocked to see the state she was in, because she was such a outgoing person. Really, nothing was too much for her in life. And when he found her, when she was fit, she was marvellous. And when she wasn't fit, all she wanted to do was be left alone, sitting in the dark. And it was very, very, very sad for him to see that.
So where was she?
She was living by herself in a hovel near enough. You know, because remember, this was before the state of Israel was born. There was no chance of him going to live with her. She didn't have facilities. She was living like in a where they put a bed up.
I might have forgotten, but how did your sister then get out of Vienna?
Well, she got permission through my father legitimately to come in late July to Israel. She went on a transport, but by the time she arrived in Israel, she was in such a bad mental state that she went straight into a sanatorium. The reason is, she told me, was in the Krugerheim where she was, there were 6 weeks where the SS surrounded it. They did no physical harm to her, but they did not allow anybody out or anybody in. And the constant marching of boots affected her more than some others. It really affected her mind, and she got schizophrenia. She admitted she was not physically done, it was just all mental. And she went straight in a sanatorium, and periodically, I mean, I could not believe it, even her own daughter couldn't believe it until they got married. The sort of people she came over with on the transport became the big builders of Israel, you know, but they were the ones, when the state of Israel was born, they were all, I mean, the Lord Mayor of the big towns of Ramat Gan were all her contemporaries. But they all came to her. When I went to the wedding, I met all these people, right? And this is a shame. And they were all saying, your sister was the most educated amongst us all. She could speak English, French, and we couldn't, but it wasn't to be.
And can you bring us up to date with your own personal life?
My own personal life.
How did you get to Manchester?
Well, to Manchester, when I came to Manchester to study at Manchester Technical College, I stayed in a students' hostel. I was very happy. For the first time, I had a real companionship with nearly everybody in that hostel was students as well, and I was the only one who had intensive course. I was working rather hard, and I really enjoyed it. I stayed behind, and then the war came to an end, and they brought the people over from the concentration camp, and the people in the Jewish Refugee Committee said, look, you know sport, can you organise sporting activities for these boys from the concentration camps that know English? And I and Irving Gerling formed a club, which we called afterwards Springfield. He was the youth leader, I was the sports officer, and this is how I kept in touch with all the boys who came over from the concentration camp. Although I'm not a survivor from the concentration camp, I've been their vice chairman since its inception. My wife, I met her in the same youth club. I met her, she was the secretary, we married, and she became the secretary of the Football League. I formed the Manchester Jewish Soccer League, who is now thriving. You know, when I reformed it, we had 5 teams. Now they got 100 teams in it, and I started work. Well, I served first of all with Madame Platz. Then I started work with for the Sun Alliance, a national Vulcan, as an electrical surveyor. I got my national certificate, high national certificate, became a graduate of the Institute of Electrical Engineer, and I was quite happy. And I had a son. He takes after me. He's good in mathematics. He got he went to all his schooling never cost me anything. He got a scholarship to Manchester Grammar School, then to Cambridge University. Got a bursary. He got a first class honours in mathematics in Cambridge, and now I've got two grandchildren by him. One grandchild, the daughter, is just 13. She just won a place to one of the best girls' schools in Manchester, Withington. My grandson, he's clever, but he doesn't want to learn, dead lazy. He's as clever as anybody. He goes to the Jewish school, King David. He's just 10 years old. I've got a job making him work at his studies. All he's interested is computers. But he's a nice lad. And I'm very happy. I've got two lovely grandchildren, a lovely wife. I'm in reasonably good health. Enjoy my sporting activities still. All I'm fit now is play golf and attend a few football matches.
Herbert, you've been telling us about your experiences morning. What does all of this mean to you?
Well, I now, only now, do realise how fortunate, not now, this has come on to me, particularly when I've been to the Kindertransport reunion, how fortunate I've been that I've been really spared the real hardship of coming out, and I'm one of the very fortunate ones who really didn't have it as rough as a lot of my contemporaries. I've been spared that, and by and large, I now realise that what they found very difficult, I did not find as difficult, because for 3 years before I came to England, I already was separated from my family, and that, to a certain extent, hardened me. I was used to making my own decisions for quite some times, but against this is now, I think more and more now than I've done in the last 5 to 10 years. If I dream, it's nearly always what happened a long time ago. The most amazing thing is that I often dream what happened to me as a child, but I dream about it in English, it's not in German. And what my father said is what he said to me, exactly what he said, but it's in English, which is amazing. And I'm the only time I really get depressed when I see some of the nostalgic things that remind me of my life in Vienna.
Have you been back to Vienna?
I've been to Vienna a few times. The first time was in 1956. I went back and never saw not one person who I knew. Then I made inquiries. Not one member of my family or my immediate acquaintances was living. Right? This was in 1956. But I got all the information I needed, and I came back. And then I went back twice with Manchester United. Once I went on the official part in the official aeroplane, because they thought that might be useful to them, speaking English, all expenses paid, with Busby, who I was quite friendly with. He was the manager there. And the last time was only this year, when I went with my son for the first time to Vienna to see them play in the European Cup.
And what do you think of Vienna today?
Well, it's the most amazing thing, which I was really amazed at. We met a girl in a restaurant. She came from Germany. She says, I can't tell you. I went after a flat, and it's the top flat. They call it A grade. Beautiful flat. You walk in, high ceilings, beautiful. I'm sharing a toilet with two other people, with two other flats on the landing. This is in one of the best districts. And this is still like, they've still got the buildings like they were an empire, and they've built it up, and we're very affluent. But unfortunately, they've got an inbuilt anti-Semitism in it. I had one experience. I was with a taxi driver. He told me he was too young to join the army, and he spoke very nicely. He only spoke German, so he said, my son couldn't speak English, so I had to translate. Couldn't speak German, so he wouldn't speak English. And as we passed through, he was very impressed when He said, oh, my grandson goes now to the same grammar school that you went to, when we showed it him. Then we saw a Jew passing by in the Taborstrasse with long beards in the payas. And my son says, how many Jews are there living in Vienna? So I translated to him, how many Jews are there living in Vienna now? So he said, he says, Shong enough, which means enough, we've got enough. And I said, well, what sort of answer is this? So he must have realised I did that. So he said it in German. He says, well, there are two types of Jews. Jews like you who work, and Jews like him who wear the Peeslach. In other words, if you wear the long sideways, you're not a worker. You are a worker, and these are like parasites.
So did you?
Well, until then, he was going to get a good tip. I told him to drop me as soon as I could do, and says goodbye. And he realised he dropped the clanger. Never got a tip.
Have you any other thoughts that you'd like to?
Well, the only thoughts I have got is I find it difficult to realise that some of the people that I knew went actually voluntary back to live in Vienna, and some of the people went voluntary back to live in Germany, which I at the moment could not possibly do. In fact, so much so that I don't think I could be happy going on a holiday there. You know, I would go there to visit, to show my family where I was born and all this, and do this. This is a different thing. But to enjoy a real holiday there would be very difficult. Only because, not because the younger generation. If I see people of the same age, I would look at them and say, what the hell were you doing in the war? During the wartime. The younger generation is a different thing. I was treated exceptionally well when I wanted to get information by the very young generation. Right? But with the older people, it's a different thing.
Any final comments, Herbert?
No final comments. All I can say, I'm very happy to be here, and I hope we'll continue to have another few more years enjoying myself here with my family.
And can I add my good wishes to you for that?
Thank you very much.
You, Herbert. It's been a great privilege to hear your story this morning. Thank you.
Right. You haven't got
Tape number 6.
well, this is my darling wife, Louise Elliott. We've been married 45 years. I don't know whether she wants me to tell you when she was born. 19th of June, 1931. Right, and her maiden name was Moss. We've got a peculiar thing. We've got a brother living further up the road, and we had a mother living in between us. So we had the whole family living in the same street. Now, my son, Stephen, lives only just around the corner from my brother-in-law, and this is my first grandchild, Elizabeth Elliott. She has just been 13, and this is my second grandchild, Peter Elliott. He was 10 in March. Have you got something to say, Peter? You always got something to say. What have you got to say? Good. And what about you, Elizabeth?
I think it's great too.
Yes. They are the apple of my eye. To them, the two grandchildren have given me more pleasure than anything else. I'm not saying anything else is wrong. They're the bonus in my late years. That's the correct thing to say. I've now got the time to enjoy them.
Good.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. So I'll come and sit down here. And I won't cue you. Peter will cue you. Stuart, I'm sorry.
Watch yourself. Okay. This is a photograph of my father, Herman Eisenthal, and mother, Stella Eisenthal, on their wedding day, which was in Vienna in 1920. There's a photograph of my mother, Stella Almuslina. That was a maiden name taken as she passed out from the finishing thing of a commercial